I wasn't snooping. I was standing in my brother's kitchen, rinsing a wine glass, when her phone lit up on the counter. One vibration. Then another. The screen turned on by itself. Last night was worth the risk. Same place tomorrow? I froze with my hand still under the faucet. The name wasn't my brother's. It wasn't even saved, just a number with a heart emoji. Before I could look away, another message slid up. Delete this. He can't know. I remember the sound the water made when I dropped the glass. Too loud. Shattering. She rushed in from the hallway, smiling already, perfectly calm, until she saw me staring at her phone. For half a second, her face changed. Just a crack. Then it was gone. "Oh my God, are you okay?" she said, stepping between me and the counter, flipping the phone face down with a laugh. "You scared me." My heart was pounding so hard it felt physical, like pressure in my throat. I couldn't hear anything except that sentence replaying in my head, "He can't know." I looked at her. This woman who hosted perfect dinners. Who posted anniversary captions about my best friend. Who kissed my brother goodbye every morning like it meant something. She met my eyes and tilted her head slightly, a warning disguised as concern. "You didn't see anything, right?" That was the moment I understood two things at once. She was cheating on my brother, and she already expected my silence. I nodded automatically, not because I agreed, but because my body didn't know how to react yet. Behind us, my brother laughed in the living room, unaware that his marriage had just split open in front of me, quietly, irreversibly. And nothing would ever be the same again. She didn't confront me right away. That was the first thing that scared me. She waited until later that night, until my brother went upstairs to shower, until the house settled into that soft evening quiet that makes secrets feel safer. She poured 2 glasses of wine and slid one toward me like we were co-conspirators instead of enemies. "About earlier," she said lightly, sitting across from me. "You know how phones are. People text the wrong numbers. Old friends. Misunderstandings." She watched my face closely, measuring, adjusting. I said nothing. Her smile tightened. "I just don't want you to jump to conclusions. You've always been emotional." She laughed, like it was an inside joke between us. "And honestly, Mark doesn't need stress right now." There it was. Not denial. Management. She leaned in. "Families survive because people know when to stay out of things that don't concern them." I felt my stomach drop. She wasn't afraid I'd tell him. She was assuming I wouldn't. When I didn't respond, she sighed and changed tactics. "You love your brother. So do I. Why hurt him over something you don't fully understand?" I wanted to scream that I did understand. That I had seen the words. That they were burned into my brain. But she spoke like someone already in control of the narrative. "He'd never forgive you for putting ideas in his head," she added softly. "And honestly? Neither would the rest of the family." Upstairs, the shower turned off. She stood, smoothed her shirt, and smiled again. "Perfect, practiced." "Think about it," she said as she walked away. "This only becomes a problem if you make it one." That night, lying awake in their guest room, I realized the truth wasn't just dangerous. It was inconvenient. The next morning, they moved through the house like nothing had happened. Coffee brewed. Toast popped. She kissed my brother on the cheek and asked if he wanted eggs or oatmeal, like loyalty could be measured in breakfast choices. From the outside, their marriage was flawless. The kind people pointed to and said, "That's what I want someday." Matching pajamas on Christmas. Weekend hikes. Anniversary posts with captions about choosing each other every day. Mark loved to tell people he'd married his best friend. He said it with pride, with relief, like he'd won something rare. And she leaned into that image fully, supportive wife, steady hand on his arm, soft smile when he spoke. Watching them felt surreal now, like I was standing behind a one-way mirror. I saw how she adjusted her tone around him, how carefully she curated warmth. I saw how he trusted her completely, never checking her phone, never questioning late errands or sudden plans. At dinner, she laughed at his jokes a second longer than necessary. She reached for his hand under the table. She played the part so well that for a brief, terrifying moment, I wondered if I had imagined the messages. That's how convincing she was. Family friends commented on how lucky he was. My mother told her, "We're so grateful you found each other." She accepted the praise graciously, eyes flicking toward me just long enough to remind me, this is the story everyone believes. And I realized the illusion wasn't just for the world. It was protection. As long as the marriage looked perfect, the truth would always seem unreasonable. And anyone who challenged it, especially me, would look like the problem. Sitting there, passing the salad, I understood why she was so confident. Perfect marriages don't get questioned. They get defended. I hadn't just dropped by that weekend by accident. I was there because she asked me to come. A month earlier, she'd called saying Mark was overwhelmed at work, that she wanted to surprise him with a small family dinner, that she could really use my help. She said it sweetly, like she trusted me. Like I was safe. We'd grown close after their wedding. Or at least, I thought we had. She texted me almost daily, complaints about stress, jokes about Mark's habits, little confessions that made me feel included. I'd listened. I'd reassured her. I'd defended her when relatives called her controlling or distant. She let me into their routines. Their kitchen. Their quiet moments. She made me feel like an ally. That's why I was there early that day. Why I was comfortable moving around the house alone. Why her phone sitting on the counter didn't feel like an invasion, it felt normal. And that's the cruel irony. I didn't discover the affair because I was suspicious. I discovered it because I was trusted. Or because she thought I was. Looking back, I wonder if she miscalculated. If she assumed my loyalty to family peace outweighed my loyalty to my brother. If she thought being close to me meant being untouchable. She'd built a world where everyone had a role. Mark was the devoted husband, she was the perfect wife. And I, without realizing it, had been cast as the silent witness. The person close enough to see the truth. And expected to do nothing with it. Once you know the truth, your memory rewrites itself. Moments I dismissed as nothing began lining up with disturbing clarity. The late nights she blamed on work emergencies. The way she'd step outside to take calls, lowering her voice like secrecy was a habit, not an exception. The sudden obsession with privacy, new passcodes, phone always face down, screen dimmed. I remembered how she'd tease Mark for being clingy whenever he asked where she was going. How she framed his concern as insecurity, laughed it off in front of others. I remembered defending her then, telling myself modern marriages looked different. There were the trips, too. Weekend girls' getaways with friends I'd never met. One time Mark mentioned wanting to join her next time, and she reacted too fast, too sharp, before smoothing it over with a joke. I remembered the way she watched other men when she thought no one noticed. The confidence. The familiarity. At the time, I thought it was harmless flirtation, maybe even nothing at all. The worst part was realizing how often she'd tested the ground around me. Little comments like, "Some things are better left unsaid," or "Honesty can be selfish." I'd nodded, not understanding that she was checking how far she could go. Those weren't random opinions. They were rehearsals. Every red flag had been there, waving quietly. I just hadn't known what language it was written in yet, and now that I did, I couldn't unread it. The past didn't feel distant anymore. It felt complicit. I told myself one message wasn't enough. That maybe, somehow, I'd misunderstood. I needed that lie to survive the weekend. But the proof came looking for me. Later that afternoon, she asked me to grab her laptop from the bedroom while she was on a call. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed no. But the screen was already open when I walked in. An email notification slid down in the corner. "Miss you already. Last night felt too real." Same number. Same tone. Same certainty. My hands shook as I scrolled. Hotel confirmations. Photos she'd sent, cropped carefully, no face, but unmistakably her. Dates that overlapped with nights Mark thought she was working late. One message made my stomach turn, she's harmless. She won't say anything. That's when it stopped being about infidelity and became something else entirely. She wasn't just cheating. She was counting on my silence. I closed the laptop just as she walked in, eyes sharp, scanning my face. For a split second, she knew. Then she smiled. You okay? She asked casually. I nodded again. The same automatic response. But this time it felt like swallowing glass. Downstairs, Mark was setting the table, humming. I watched him move through the house he thought was safe, built on a reality that no longer existed. The proof sat heavy in my chest. It wasn't a suspicion anymore. It wasn't a possibility. It was a fact. And facts don't disappear just because they're inconvenient. I didn't plan to confront her. It just happened, too much pressure, too little air. When Mark stepped out to run an errand, the silence felt loaded. I followed her into the kitchen, my voice low but shaking. I saw the emails. She didn't flinch. That alone told me everything. Instead, she sighed like I'd disappointed her. You shouldn't have gone through my things. I didn't, I said. It was open. She smiled thinly. Of course it was. Then the lies started, layered and confident. She said the man meant nothing. She said marriages were complicated. She said Mark wasn't as perfect as he seemed, that I didn't know what it was like living with him. When I didn't back down, her tone changed. You think telling him makes you noble? She asked quietly. It makes you destructive. She stepped closer. Do you have any idea what this would do to him? To the family? To you? My chest burned. He deserves to know. She laughed softly. He deserves peace. And you deserve to stay in your place. That was the intimidation, subtle, precise. She reminded me how the family already thought I was dramatic. How Mark trusted her more than anyone. How easily the story could flip. No one likes the person who ruins everything, she said gently. Especially when they can't prove it. Mark's car pulled into the driveway. She straightened, smile back in place. Think carefully, she whispered. This only ends well if you stay quiet. And I realized she wasn't afraid of the truth. She was sure she could bury it. I didn't even tell the family. Not at first. Somehow, the pressure found me anyway. It started subtly. My mother called and asked if everything was okay, said I'd seemed off at dinner. An aunt mentioned that Mark's wife felt judged lately. That she was under a lot of stress and could use support, not suspicion. When I finally hinted that something wasn't right, the reaction was immediate and unified. Are you sure you didn't misunderstand? You've always been sensitive. It's not your marriage. They spoke softly, reasonably, like concern wrapped in caution. No one asked what I'd seen. No one wanted details. One cousin told me I had a habit of projecting. Another warned me that inserting myself into Mark's relationship could permanently damage my bond with him. My mother cried and said, I just want my family to stay together. That sentence followed me everywhere. She, meanwhile, played her role perfectly. She checked in on me, asked if I was okay, told people she was worried about me. I watched her rewrite the story in real time, me as unstable, her as patient. When I tried to stand firm, they framed it as cruelty. As if truth was an act of violence. Why would you want to hurt him like that, they asked. As if she wasn't already doing it. By the end of the week, I felt disoriented. Doubting myself, wondering if silence really was the kinder option. That's the power of gaslighting, it doesn't make you believe a lie. It makes you question whether you're allowed to believe the truth. Every option felt wrong. If I stayed silent, I became part of the lie. I'd smile at Mark, listen to him talk about his future, Let him trust a woman who was actively betraying him, and me. Silence would be easier. Quieter. I could keep my place in the family. I could pretend I didn't carry something corrosive inside my chest. But if I spoke, I would be the trigger. The moment everything collapsed would be traced back to me. I wouldn't be the messenger, I'd be the villain. The one who couldn't let things be. At night, I replayed his laugh from the living room, the way he defended her automatically. She'd never do that, he'd said once, casually, when someone joked about cheating. I wondered if that memory would hurt more than the betrayal itself. She texted me once, "I trust you'll do the right thing." No threat. No apology. Just confidence. The family's voices echoed louder than my own. Don't interfere. Don't destroy things. Think about the consequences. But no one talked about the consequences of silence. About what it does to you when you protect someone who doesn't deserve it. About how every day you don't speak, you choose comfort over integrity. I realized something then, this wasn't just about Mark. It was about who I'd have to become to keep the peace, and I didn't like the version of myself that stayed quiet to make liars comfortable. I hadn't planned it. I wanted him to find out on his own terms, to protect him from my panic. But life, or maybe karma, had other plans. Mark came home early one evening, humming, tired but happy from work. She was in the kitchen, pretending to stir a pot, perfectly calm. I was sitting at the counter, pretending to scroll through my phone. She didn't notice the laptop still open, the messages glowing faintly on the screen. He leaned over to kiss her cheek and froze. His eyes flicked to the screen. Confusion, then the slow realization as he read the words I had already memorized, dates, hotel confirmations, messages begging for secrecy. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Is this," he whispered. She turned, smile perfect, eyes calculating. "I can explain," she said smoothly. But he didn't give her a chance. He turned to me, disbelief etched across his face. You knew?" I nodded. The weight of every sleepless night, every agonizing thought, pressed into my chest. He looked back at her, and the mask finally slipped. Her calm faltered, just for a fraction, and I saw the fear she had never shown me. Mark's hand shook as he dropped to the floor, clutching his head. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" he choked out, voice breaking. Why would she, why didn't you?" I could only sit there, silent, because words wouldn't fix this. I had delivered the truth, and suddenly the world we all pretended to live in was gone. The house, the laughter, the perfect marriage, it shattered in an instant. And no one could put it back together. The days after were a blur of disbelief and raw emotion. Mark barely slept. He wandered the house like a ghost, touching her belongings as if trying to memorize every detail before discarding them, as if remembering would hurt less than facing the emptiness. She, on the other hand, wore her armor like nothing had changed. Smiles at family gatherings, laughter in the kitchen, the same perfect wife routine. I watched him shrink under the weight of what he'd just learned while she remained untouchable, untarnished in public. He oscillated between denial and rage. "This can't be real," he muttered one night, staring at the floor. She wouldn't. She couldn't. The words tore him in two. I didn't know whether to hug him or let him unravel alone. Family members tried to smooth it over. It could be a misunderstanding, they said, even as his pain became impossible to ignore. Their words were like nails, trying to seal the truth back into silence. Mark's trust shattered, leaving a hollow ache that no one could fill. Nights of screaming into pillows, questions shouted at walls, moments of tears he couldn't hold back. The emotional collapse wasn't just anger, it was betrayal, disbelief, mourning the life he thought he had. And all around him, she moved like nothing happened, leaving me in the terrifying position of knowing the full extent of the damage, powerless to fix it. The perfect marriage illusion was gone. The fallout wasn't just visible, it was visceral, and it consumed every corner of our family. For weeks, she maintained the act. Perfectly coiffed hair, soft smiles, polite words to everyone, like nothing had ever happened. But cracks began to appear, tiny at first, almost invisible if you weren't looking closely. I noticed it in the way she flinched when Mark's phone buzzed. The way she hesitated before answering family calls, the flicker of impatience when someone asked a simple question. She laughed too loudly, too quickly, trying to fill the empty space her lies had created. One evening, she dropped something in the kitchen, a glass, a casual slip. When Mark turned to look, she snapped, voice sharp, a hint of panic beneath the surface. "Stop staring at me like that." Her charm, once effortless, now had edges. She tried to gaslight Mark, insisting he misunderstood, that I had overreacted, that everyone was against him. But her confidence wavered in private. The arrogance, the calm certainty, the manipulation, they began to falter under the weight of exposure. I saw glimpses of who she really was, defensive, scared, calculating, desperate to maintain control. The woman who smiled for the world was nowhere to be found when the truth no longer served her. It was subtle, terrifying, and satisfying all at once. Every lie she had built her life around began to show the cracks. And the more she tried to hide, the more she revealed her real self, the person who had betrayed someone she claimed to love. For the first time, it felt like the balance of power was shifting. And I realized the illusion of perfection could only last so long. The moment the truth began to settle, everything changed. It wasn't dramatic, no shouting matches or public humiliation, but the quiet shifts were undeniable. Family members who had once pressed me to stay silent started asking questions. Casual comments about something being off now came with a wary glance at her. Mark, slowly, began to trust my words more than hers. He'd been cautious at first, clinging to the fragments of the marriage he thought he knew. But as the inconsistencies piled up, her evasions, half-truths, and occasional slips, he started listening to me. Not just listening, but believing. She noticed. The confidence that had once allowed her to manipulate the household faltered. Subtle smirks vanished, quick retorts became forced, and the way she watched others changed, from dominance to calculation, fear lurking behind the mask. Even extended family, who had criticized me initially, began seeing the cracks. The perfect wife facade didn't hold up under scrutiny when I remained steady, quiet, and unwavering. Every lie she tried to spin against me was met with evidence I had carefully preserved. The shift was not explosive. It was like a tide slowly eroding a cliff, inevitable, relentless, and unstoppable. The control she had taken for granted slipped, and with each passing day, the truth gained ground, quietly reclaiming the space she had thought belonged solely to her deception. For the first time, I felt a strange calm. I wasn't just the messenger of bad news, I was the keeper of reality. And reality was powerful. By now, the family dynamics had fractured in ways no one could ignore. The perfect image she'd cultivated for years lay in pieces, and the fallout extended far beyond Mark and me. Relatives whispered in corners, exchanged wary glances at gatherings, and tiptoed around conversations that once felt safe. Mark was no longer the smiling, oblivious husband everyone admired. He was raw, cautious, and guarded. His trust in people, even in family, had been shaken. Every gesture, every word from her was met with suspicion, and rightly so. She, on the other hand, moved through the house like a ghost of her former self. The confidence that once commanded attention now drew silent judgment. Every attempt to charm or manipulate was met with hesitation, subtle eye rolls, or questions she couldn't easily answer. The admiration she once soaked in evaporated. I felt it too, the shift in how relatives treated me. Some still doubted, but many began listening, offering quiet nods when I recounted details she could no longer refute. I was no longer the dramatic niece or jealous sister-in-law. I had become a quiet authority, a witness to truth. Conversations changed. Holidays were tense. Trust had to be rebuilt, piece by fragile piece. And though the family was still whole in a sense, the illusion of perfection, the one that had protected the guilty, was gone. No one could pretend anymore. The consequences of her betrayal had reshaped not just her marriage, but every relationship tethered to it. And everyone, willingly or not, had to reckon with the truth. Months later, the dust settled, but nothing returned to what it had been. Mark began the slow, painful work of rebuilding himself, reclaiming his trust, his confidence, his sense of what a relationship should feel like. He leaned on friends, therapy, and the few family members who finally saw the truth. Every step forward was cautious, deliberate, like learning to walk again after a fall. She tried to salvage appearances, but it was too late. The mask that once commanded the room now betrayed her with every word and gesture. People no longer took her at face value. The admiration she once soaked in had dried up, leaving only the echo of what she had lost. As for me, the weight of what I had witnessed, and chosen to reveal, never fully lifted. I had carried the truth, endured the gaslighting, navigated the moral dilemma, and watched a family fracture and slowly begin to heal. And in doing so, I realized something vital: silence protects the wrong people. Comfort is never worth the cost of truth deferred. I don't share this to boast, or to claim moral superiority. I share it because someone else might be standing in the same place I did, unsure whether to speak, terrified of consequences. To anyone in that position, here's what I learned: the truth hurts, yes. But lies, left unchallenged, destroy everything quietly, invisibly, and permanently. Sometimes, doing the right thing means standing alone. Sometimes, it means shattering illusions for the people you love. And though it's painful, it's the only way to protect what really matters: integrity, honesty, and the knowledge that you didn't let silence shield betrayal.